Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Propagandacast with me, Imperial Dane. And today we're having a 1 versus 1 for you right here in Beaux Lowlands with the old empty barn. Yes, indeed, but that's not really going to be the main focus point of our efforts. Thankfully, that would be pretty dull since it is, as some of you might have guessed, empty. Now we'll be focusing on the two clashing forces who shall be blowing through the lowlands, blasting bits to pieces and who knows what else. And in the northern corner we shall be seeing Jpelko 1 of the 24th Infantry Division. Lovely chap, I suspect, who knows. But here he is trying to make a way through the lowlands, hoping to circumvent the German positions. And who shall be opposing him? It shall be... well, that's not going to be pronounceable, is it? A series of numbers. Could possibly be the only thing they've retrieved of the commander afterwards, who knows? So we'll just refer to him as Das Hauptmann. Yes, indeed, that sounds rather dashing. And he shall be leading elements of the 709th Bodenständige Grenadier Division. And why not? Let's get straight to the action, eh? Though then again, I probably should again go through the map briefly for those that aren't too aware of it. Beaux Lowlands is, as somehow you guessed it, lowlands, sort of our high grounds, right running through the middle with a road, dividing the map in half in one way, but there's another thing right bisecting the map as well, a river going through here, which also tends to act as the natural front line of the map, not the road in this case, although it can happen as well, but usually you see the road acting as the front line, with these points being usually the more contested ones. And of course that also presents any player with several points of attack, usually 3. Again, this point, and this point. So usually you have to sort of think about how do you want to defend, where do you want to defend, and so on and so on. Rather interesting thing, and of course also implies the attacker, where and how do you want to attack. Of course that again depends on the player. Some might just mark about, continue running each other's forces, and then sort of either way one at some point coincidentally wins. You can get those as well on the lowlands. So, but anyways, let's get straight to it. Let us not chat anymore. Let's not go on about those empty barns, no matter how interesting they may be. Otherwise, the map in terms of resources is pretty much mirrored. You have 2 right here next to the river, 2 munitions point. The other fuel resources are otherwise, in fact, highly covered by either strategic points. Of course, these river points, which of course can get a bit harassed as well, depending on the aggressiveness of your opponent. And sometimes you do sort of see people trying to extend these points here between the bases, but then again, the river does make it sort of difficult to sort of keep things going, and it does slow down again because negative cover like this decreases the speed of your units, and of course also makes them more exposed, so you can't get those sort of actions where a lot of fighting goes on here and a lot of people die and disappear into the water, never to be found. At the same time, we are seeing a barracks going up, engineers moving out to either side, jolly good there, while the pioneers of the 716th or 9th, was it? 9th, are moving heavily towards the east. Rather interesting there. Volksgrenadier's first unit on the field for the Wehrmacht, and I wait you will be seeing some riflemen up from the Americans. Yes, indeed. Good old GIs. Well, not really old in most cases. And good, I suppose. Depends on if you're wondering if it's morality or in terms of combat experience, in which case, again, that depends on which division. Some were veterans after not Normandy, but Italy and North Africa, and some were pretty raw and green. There we go, securing this strategic point for Uncle Sam. Volksgrenadiers moving through here. Are they aware of this sort of sneaky harass seizing right above them? Apparently not. They're going straight for the munitions point, and this of course could lead to an interesting situation where the riflemen shall ambush the Volksgrenadiers, but no, the Volksgrenadiers are not aware of what's going on. Those sneaky armies will not be able to get the drop on the Volksgrenadiers, who continue firing away from a distance, although why they are retreating right there is a bit beyond me. They could easily hold this position, perhaps put down some sandbags, and you really increase the defense of that position. Instead, they are now pulling back, really far back, in fact, towards this stone wall, and looks like Jpelko is sending his riflemen in, and I do apologize for this sort of maneuvering about. There we go, and one rifleman is dropped as they sort of figure, wait, hey, this point's unguarded, but it was not. Instead, there were Pulse Grenadiers waiting in ambush with their rifles. Further riflemen arriving, and looks like further Pulse Grenadiers are marching towards the east, rather having realized this is probably going to be the hotspot of the map. Either side is really reinforcing, but no, these pioneers are drawing a lot of attention and might get gunned down by these rather rascally riflemen. In fact, there we go, pioneers retreating. They will have to run a gauntlet of doom, and looks like the first one did not survive it, and looks like the second one might not either. Or will he? Will he make it towards the bend and be behind the trees? Yes, indeed. So there we go, first engagement, rather won by the Americans. There was one here, but I say that was more of a draw, despite one rifleman going down. Might be another push soon here. Yes, indeed, no riflemen are going through around this sort of copse of woods. Rather interesting. The Volksgrenadiers will probably not be aware of this until it's too late, and the riflemen are awfully close. A third Volksgrenadier team out from Mr. Das Hauptmann. We'll just again referring to him as Das Hauptmann. And there we go, riflemen advancing through here, but not getting close to the Volksgrenadiers. Instead, they're getting a bit too distant. But of course, the Bukhash right here is providing some nice shot blocking there. And of course, that is forcing the Volksgrenadiers into the line of fire of the riflemen, which is rather biting them than they are. Since, of course, they're standing on the wrong side of the cover, and they are close to the riflemen and exposed. And the one is already down. Not entirely sure why he persists in moving through there. That was absolutely terrible, in fact. But further Volksgrenadiers moving in. No, they are apparently moving towards the west. And further riflemen are arriving in the east. That is absolutely a misappropriation of Wehrmacht resources, and things are really going bad now due to this rather severe mismaneuver. One team will have to retreat, leaving behind only one team of Volksgrenadiers to hold back this rather large force of 17 riflemen. No, those Volksgrenadiers retreat as well, having rather realized they cannot win this. And of course, that's always a good thing, knowing when to retreat and when to stay your ground. That was probably the time to stay their ground, but then again, they probably could have gotten some more casualties off if they had proceeded to handle this a bit more probably, but instead they sort of mucked about and got gunned down, which is rather unfortunate. Now they sort of have to focus in the west, which of course mostly American held. Volksgrenadiers is going for this munitions point, and of course there we go, cutting off this point from the Americans. Good job there. Flamethrower has been equipped for the pioneers, but they are still standing out in the open, and of course one thing to note, troops out in the water, i.e. negative cover, will in fact take less damage from flamethrowers. Keep that in mind. Water for some reason negates fire. Wouldn't believe it myself, but there you go. One pioneer is down, and looks like the other one will have to retreat, having learned a bit of about flamethrowers on water right here. And we are seeing skirmish face up. Still no MG42s, no units besides 3 Volksgrenadier teams. This is a rather interesting start. Not one I really have ever seen from the Wehrmacht. And a rifleman apparently got curious or something, left his entire team and just wandered about. I can only say shit happens, because that was what it was. Nothing more, nothing less. Volksgrenadiers is getting ready to move in, but riflemen are ready and waiting while these Volksgrenadiers are continuing to sneak about here behind enemy lines. Engineers moving in, apparently not aware what's going on, and there are Volksgrenadiers waiting for them. And engineers against Volksgrenadiers is not going to be a happy ending for the engineers. There we go, retreating while it looks like the Americans are getting ready for a hefty push. We are seeing a medic station going up here, a bit too obviously placed. And now the riflemen are charging across open ground and across negative terrain. Again, cover. I mean, no, against flamethrowers, great, but against rifles, or even worse, if they had MP40s, those riflemen would be absolutely torn apart. And there we go, riflemen suffering heavy losses. 2 teams forced to retreat. 1 team will be able to hold the line, or will it not? Probably not. In fact, these Volksgrenadiers could push through, and there are no sandbags to really aid these riflemen. So if Das Hauptmann pushes through, he will be able to seize this area. American medics moving through, and again, awfully exposed position for this medic station. I mean, if the Volksgrenadiers push through here in the east, that medic station will be gone. It will be no more. It will be an ex-medic station. It shall be a haunted medic station, an empty one. And he's moving his Volksgrenadiers awfully close, and we are seeing pineapple grenades for the Americans. And these Volksgrenadiers getting absolutely torn apart, murdered, massacred, and one getting absolutely burned alive. That's rather unfortunate fate there. Volksgrenadiers pushing through here in the east. Not entirely sure why they did not assist their brethren in this fight. In fact, looks like these riflemen have gained veterancy 1. Jolly good job there. Grenadiers getting ready. Nothing else. These Volksgrenadiers will be in dire need of reinforcements. And looks like some Volksgunners are getting the MP40, the Schmeiser, as some called it, and the Americans, I believe, just called it the burp gun, although I'm not entirely sure why. I don't believe anyone has ever burped a 9mm Panabellum bullet. But that might just be me. And there we go, rifle engaging the Volksgunners. Volksgunners getting away, grenade flying at them, but they get into the old empty barn, thus ensuring it is now the barn with the Volksgunners in it. But not looking good for the Volksgunners. They're still facing off against veterans 1 riflemen. And the Volksgunners are still rather low in numbers and health, and will have to retreat. There we go. And we are seeing the engineers busily laying down some sandbags to provide a sort of fortification right here. Nice job there. Volksgunners in the west holding off a lot of Americans with MP40s, who are once more charging across open negative cover against troops with MP40s. But there we go. BAR's research at the exact same moment. And these Volksgunners are going to absolutely take some horrible losses. Why they didn't put down some sandbags here is a bit beyond me. That could actually make them much stronger. Grenadiers still not doing anything. A bit odd, and now more MP40s are being equipped for the Wehrmacht. Charging rears. Am I reading this right? That's... Usually you place the barbed wire on the side where you expect the enemy to come from, so you can't use it. But apparently Jpelko felt sorry for the Volksgunners and decided, out of graciousness and charity, to write them with some cover. I mean, Jpelko, bravo, bravo. I'm probably sure this is some sort of accident they haven't, but still, you can't help but smile when you see something like this. I'm not trying to make fun of you, Jpelko, it's just fun to see something like this. So jolly good show there. Jpelko, the bigger man there, putting down cover for his enemy. That's a good sport. Anyhow, these Volksgunners will probably face some trouble or not. In fact, they could just pop into the cover and of course have a nice position there. And those riflemen, although if they can catch the Volksgunners out there open, no, the Volksgunners make it to the sandbags, and of course the riflemen rather realize that they're standing on the wrong side. Now they're getting gunned down by the MP40s, because MP40s are really great. No, a grenade flying at the Volksgunners. Volksgunners though dodge it with expert grace. And now these medics might get gunned down, or no, the engineers will probably be a first priority. There we go. And veterans, you 1 up for these infantry troops, and might want to gun down those medics first. Of course, I am not condoning the breaking of Geneva Conventions. You did not hear that. And if you did, please report to the Gestapo. I mean, nothing. Anyways, we are seeing Volksgunners getting reinforced, and these Grenadiers are still standing about, getting Panzerschrecks instead of actually getting out to the field and actually doing something before that Panzerschreck becomes necessary. I'd say that's a bit of a nasty bit of forgetfulness right there. Not a good thing, and we are seeing a stormtrooper now joining in. The 17th SS sending in some of their best Panzer Grenadiers to help them. Jolly good show there. Veteran troops. Strong troops, generally tougher than your regular Grenadier team, plus they can throw bundle grenades, and of course cloak. And what is this we see here? An MG42 sitting up right here, where it won't be doing much for the most part of the map. Why he didn't set it up there is a bit beyond me. Seems a bit of an odd move.
One of our sectors has been cut off.
And looks like we are seeing some riflemen engaging these Volksgunners out in the open. Volksgunners hang up some position behind some old empty wooden boxes. Could be they once continued Wehrmacht rations. And looks like we are seeing a small engagement here between Grenadiers and Riflemen, and the Riflemen are getting absolutely beaten up by the veteran Grenadiers. And now the Stormtroopers joining in the front, and Volksgunners with MP40s. A BAR is dropped, and that was a really good time to pick up that BAR. Come on, Das Hauptmann, show you are Das Hauptmann, and pick it up. There we go. Stormtroopers now with BARs. Lots of Browning automatic rifle goodness now for the Wehrmacht. Looks like we are seeing a rifle force here, and we are seeing a supply yard coming up as well, going to decrease the upkeep, and I do believe it's time to go Jpelko and his 24th Infantry Division. My goodness, how exciting. No doctrine for him. Of course, we are seeing Blitzkrieg for these chaps. Now with the Stormtroopers on the field, no assaults, but Stormtroopers with bundled grenades and now BAR. That's really going to prove a danger to these riflemen, unless of course they can be, with a bit of luck, can get a grenade off, and there we go. Stormtroopers receiving a grenade, and oh dear, standing still. One is down, flung through the brush, and there we go. Riflemen forced to retreat out through the Stormtroopers. Perhaps these Volksgunners with MP40s as well. Pioneers moving forwards, and we are seeing a large American assault force sneaking through the center, completely unnoticed, because apparently no one has absolutely bothered with the center until now, which is actually a bit interesting, as you usually see the center being one of the hard-fought points In fact, usually also covered by mortars from both sides, which can be a bit of a pain in the arse. And there we go, engaging the stormtroopers. Pioneers nearby with flamethrowers. Stormtroopers need to react, not stand out, and there we go. Bomb grenade flying at the riflemen, but they will need to retreat. Riflemen taking absolutely horrific losses. 5 down. Stormtroopers retreating right through this mix. Riflemen retreating as well, down to 1 man thanks to the ever-explosive bundle grenade, which was a bit of an old World War I tactic, in fact, but which was adapted by the German forces, their Sturmpionier, their Sturmtruppen, and basically everything that needed to actually do a nice assault was basically a regular stick grenade with a bit more stick grenade warheads attached to it for a bit more explosive goodness. There we go, rifle engaging these Volksgrenadiers with MP40s, but they are rushing into them, although a grenade right there in the midst. Volksgrenadiers taking 2 losses. They will need to retreat if they want to survive. And oh dear, veterans, you want for these riflemen, and the last Volksgrenadier makes it out of there. We are seeing some engagement here with the Grenadiers, and there does seem to be a bit of unfortunate communication between Das Hauptmann's troops. He does not seem to coordinate them, and does seem to be, which does allow the riflemen to pick them off one by one, which generally is the wrong thing to do. In the meanwhile, we are seeing this MG42 holding back these riflemen, but not really able to hold this back from this side, and this medic station is still standing. Miraculous. And I do believe it's time for the mid-game analysis. So let's get straight to that before it is too late. Thankfully, I can pause the game. Now then, what is the situation? Well, currently, things are looking a bit dicey. Jpelko having a bit of a curious extended line. Thanks to holding the center, he can now get access to this territory, but still, Grenadiers are pushing through here. He's also having a bit of trouble here. In fact, he's having trouble with the Wehrmacht going for all of his cutoff points. He's able to really do some nasty damage to the Wehrmacht, but he's not really able to hold them back from doing this harassment, which of course is causing a bit of trouble. But there we go, a motor pool on up and a M8 on the way, which is probably going to be a bit of a problem for the Wehrmacht since they have absolutely no packs. And the only anti-tank asset is that Grenadier team with a Panzerschreck. That's going to be some rather nice times for that M8 as it plows through the Wehrmacht forces right here. That's going to end up badly. These riflemen might want to get out of there, although then again they might want to get assistance from some troops right here in the rear and clear out the MG42 before those chaps get out. Also might be an idea to actually choose a doctrine, but we'll have to see how that goes. For the Wehrmacht commander, he really needs to lay down some sort of defensive line. That's really his trouble. He's not really able to hold one spot and operate out from that. He's sort of jumping around from spot to spot, being awfully mobile, being awfully fluid, but he also needs to have a strong point. He needs something where he can tie up the American forces and then counterattack from, and he doesn't really have that, which is really going to give the American the advantage in the long run, and currently also holds most of the victory points, whereas the Wehrmacht commander is a bit low already. So, let's get back to the action, shall we? Engineers hanging about here in the rear, taking a bit of MP40 fire, or perhaps just bullets flying past the medic station. Further troops being marched towards the east. Stormtroopers now joining in. In fact, we're seeing further stormtrooper teams. Apparently they are relying a bit more on stormtroopers, but again, that M8 will prove to be a bit of a nuisance. And Grenadiers on low on men and health, facing off against riflemen low on men and health. And one rifleman is already down, but a grenade will be flying at the Grenadiers. Oh dear, the Grenadiers will have to retreat. Oh, bother. No, that was tragic. Grenadier team lost, and looks like this went completely horrific as engineers and riflemen managed to clear out this position. Stormtroopers doing absolutely nothing, apparently going somewhere else. Doesn't really seem to be any sort of decent coordination between his forces and what sort of idea he actually has. And I rather fear that shall end up detrimental to the Wehrmacht course in this sector. And particularly now as the M8 is moving in. No armored skirts though, and only getting the 50 caliber upgrade. Now generally you want the armored skirts first, then the 50 caliber upgrade. Without the armored skirt, that M8 is an awfully easy and delicious target for anti-tank assets. 2 Panzerfaust or a few Panzerschreck shots, and that M8 is gone. There we go, but now there's nothing to actually oppose it. No Panzerschreck, no packs. In fact, it's going to tear right through these stormtroopers, and there we go, retreating them most swiftly, while Wehrmacht forces are pushing once more towards the center. There we go, stormtroopers with a Panzerschreck. Riflemen charging ahead through the open ground towards these Volksgrenadiers with MP40s, taking a bit of damage. And these MP40s are actually doing rather better at longer distances than the LMG42 and is remarkably cheaper. So again, keep that in mind. Everything is better than the LMG42. And no, I'm not kidding. Stu-42 Sturm Haubitze, the 17th SS, providing some of its heavy artillery. And Pioneers just scorching because they can. Perhaps some former pyromaniacs being pressed into the Wehrmacht at this stage of the war. Hey Hans, I heard you like fire. Yes. Join the Wehrmacht. Yes. And yes, I imagine Hans having a really squeaky voice for some reason. I'm not sure why. At least Hans the pyromaniac. And there we go. Stu-42 shells hammering towards the medic station. High explosive shells crashing through the air and blowing it to bits. There shall be no medics for them. And these stormtroopers really need to get out of there once more. He seems to have a trouble recognizing when his troops are under fire when taking a point. Oh, come on. Pay attention to the minimap. And he's actually dropped a Panzerschreck. That's, again, one of the things you don't want to drop to the Americans. The second one is dropping an LMG-42 because unlike in your hands, in the hands of an American veteran unit, it actually becomes pretty dangerous. Dangerous. So not looking good for the Wehrmacht. They really seem to be mucking about now. Again, unit preservation, actual presence on the battlefield in larger scale seems to be a bit missing. MG-42 setting up in the old empty barn. Stu-42 providing a bit of firepower, and looks like we are seeing an anti-tank. And of course, this is sort of the problem with this map, or at least this start is. This is awfully difficult terrain to move through for your anti-tank guns. In fact, it will have to take a rather long route. I'm not entirely sure. No, I can't get it to show it through here, but you generally have to move it through here, I believe. And you can't really react to it so swiftly, so you really need to be prepared with anti-tank assets on this ridge if you're in the northern base. Otherwise, you're going to be facing an awful lot of problems very swiftly. Otherwise, you're going to have to need something to clear out the route first for your anti-tank gun. Either way, be aware again, terrain can rather dictate your strategy and tactics, and of course, sometimes you really need to think ahead when it comes to sort of hard to move through terrain like that. Anyhow, so let's get back to the fighting. Just wanted to point that out, as currently his anti-tank gun will be a bit indisposed as it takes the scenic route through the lowlands. Stormtroopers charging through the center. No, it's Volksgrenadiers with MP40s grenade flying at the Volksgrenadiers, killing only one. The rest of the Volksgrenadier Sturm force is charging ahead, and yes, indeed, there was in fact a Volkssturm Grenadier Division. It was made over the remnants of the 78th Sturm Division,
Composition B is in.
and was rather abbreviated as the 78th Volkssturm Division, but it should not be actually be confused with the actual Volkssturm. It was reasonably better equipped and actually had troops in it, rather than old men and boys and whoever was working at the factories. Such things should be kept in mind. And this Stu-42 charges ahead most foolishly. That's not good. And looks like we are seeing the dual Panzerschreck configuration. Terrible loss of stormtroopers, terrible loss of Stu-42. The anti-tank gun was knocked out, but not really at a good cost. And this Stu-42 is somehow still alive. And for some reason I'm experiencing a drop of frame rate a bit. I don't know why. Frap seems to be acting up a bit. It can do that. There we go. Solve the problem. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for any inconvenience. It looks like this Stu-42 though is continuing to not look very good, getting scorched, getting fired upon from all sides. This is the Stu-42 of light, a beacon of the Wehrmacht, and utterly useless. Won't take very long until a sticky bomb flies through the air, and there we go. Apparently even some trees have gotten stuck in it. There we go, a pyre ablaze. The Stu-42 is no more after its commander wasted it in a rather disgraceful manner, and a Panzer command is underway. Apparently armored units will be sent in from the 2nd Panzer Division to help. Riflemen charging through here in a large force. That was rather fortunate. My goodness, hiccups as well. This is going to be a bit of a curious cast. I apologize. Hiccups and everything. Curious frame rates. I do still hope you will enjoy it, my dear viewers. M8 armored car moving through the center, prowling like a wolf, hoping to pounce upon any unsuspecting Wehrmacht troops and tear them away from the fatherland forever. Stormtroopers in a rather unfortunate situation. They can win, but a button grenade, flying grenade though at the stormtroopers as well. Who shall win? And engineer team is lost, and these false grenades. Stormtroopers will have to retreat. Come on, stormtroopers, retreat!
Enemy unit down.
My gosh, this guy does not really seem to have gotten the idea of retreating properly. And that's really going to end up biting me in the ass very swiftly if he doesn't get a hold of himself. In fact, he's lost a lot of his infantry teams. In fact, he's lost all of his stormtroopers, which is really bad, plus all of his grenadiers. All he has back is those false grenadiers. All he has left is those false grenadiers with MP40s. Not really good at all. 4 rifleman teams, 2 engineer teams with flamethrowers. A pack. Well, it is a pack, I suppose, in German terminology, but an anti-tank gun and a Greyhound against this. Not looking good for the Wehrmacht at all. Now these pioneers are getting gunned down and forced to retreat. Das Hauptmann really needs to get his act together. He's not really acting as a proper Das Hauptmann. And pioneers taking up positions in the wooden shit for no apparent reason. That's not really going to do much for them except present them as a nice target for a grenade. There we go, grenade into the wooden shed. Blowing apart some barrels and the windows, my goodness. Hopefully no one was actually using that shit, I hope. It looks like we are seeing a Panzer IV, the 2nd Panzer Division providing a Panzer IV. Probably one of the earlier variants without the armored skirts or much else. Could also be without some proper crew. And he's actually keeping it supported, but only with pioneers, not his full grenadiers. MG42 once more setting up here. And why is he pushing through with the tank in the east and not supporting his infantry with it is beyond me. In particular, since there's an anti-tank on nearby. Of course, he doesn't know it, but still, thinking ahead tends to be a good thing. Now, this M8, of course, will be having a lot of fun in the west, while the only thing that could stop it is right here in the water, in the muck, and of course, awfully slowed down as it tries to get through it. Not really the brightest idea from Das Hauptmann. Clearly not the most experienced of commanders. Veterancy 1 now up, so that somewhat good decreases the damage taken. It looks like we are seeing some false grenadiers taking some fire here from the M8, still unable to actually do anything against it. And my goodness, he still hasn't any skirts. I mean, a few Panzerfaust and that M8 is going to be gone, but still not even that. Oh dear, and grenades flying out of the false grenadiers. One down and the other is lost. Panzer IV holding the line. Pioneers burning away. Anti-tank gun opening up on the Panzer IV. Not looking good. Now an Ostwind. Panzer IV blasting away, slowly pulling out of there. In fact, I do believe it's time to having a look back, and looks like the American commander was able to get a Pershing onto the field. M26 Pershing actually didn't fight in Normandy. It only arrived during the very late stages of the war, right after the Battle of the Bulge, where it was actually rushed into the battlefield after having realized they weren't really prepared at all for fighting German panzers, although why they wouldn't have gotten that idea before when fighting the Tigers and the Panthers in Normandy and Holland and everywhere else is beyond me. Those Americans were a bit funny. And Ostwind moving in against the M8 armored car. And the Pershing is on the prowl. Looks like the M8 is getting out of their gunner is killed though. Again, a bit lucky M8 there though. Again, no armored skirts. It could easily have been knocked out by that Ostwind. Or a Panzerfaust. Again, Panzerfaust. And he wasn't like it was lacking in munitions. God damn it. Whatever you do, don't do as this Wehrmacht commander in the later stages. In the beginning, he actually had some interesting ideas, but it utterly seemed to flounder. In particular, his unit preservation is terrible. Very, very horrific. And I'm sure there's a trench on the Eastern Front with his name on it. And looks like the Ostwind is opening up on the Pershing. The Pershing fires away. It's 90mm gun, very devastating against a flak pants like this. Of course, in terms of combat power, the Pershing was probably a bit along the lines of a Panther. In some ways, its 90mm gun, while sounding impressive, didn't actually have an awful lot more penetration. It probably had about same penetration power, in fact. Plus, it had its own engine problems. So there you go. Opening up and charging right through the Wehrmacht base. The Ostwind apparently making a run for it towards here. Panzer IV not getting repaired. Pershing having fun in the Wehrmacht base. And perhaps also in the sun. Rifleman moving through here in the lowlands. Heavily wounded, not looking too good. Volksgrenadier is charging ahead without any support. Again, not entirely sure why he's doing this. If he has any clear plan or he's just hanging about. Hoping to somehow win, or if he's just waiting for the victory points to drain out. I'm not sure. Ostwind continuing to far away, and these Volksgrenadiers are getting torn apart. And Volksgrenadiers getting torn apart. Pershing moves in. In fact, I do believe it's actually been quite some time since we've actually seen a game where the Pershing appears. Rather one of the reasons I wanted to show this game. And a lot of grenades flying through here, doing quite a bit of damage. And now the German panzers are in a bit of trouble as the Pershing moves in. Ostwind lost, and now the Panzer IV will be in quite a pickle as sticky bombs fly at it as the Pershing blows through the frontal armor. There we go, the Panzer IV is lost, and now a Grenadier team arrives, and again using the double Panzerschreck configuration. GG from Jpelko. The 24th Infantry Division having overcome the 709th Bodenständige Grenadier Division despite support from the 17th SS and the 2nd Panzer Division. Quite disgraceful. So there you go. I apologize if this was not a high skill game, but again, I don't really get an awful lot of those, and I sort of had to try and look for what might actually be interesting in the games I get. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this game. If you did, why not subscribe or tell your friends, and if you didn't, well, why not send in a replay of your own. And what did we learn from this match? What are the lessons of it? Again, unit preservation really makes a difference. Keep an eye on your troops, keep an eye on the minimap. It usually tends to flash when something's going on, like your troops are getting attacked. And keep an eye on your troops when they're taking points. He lost so many troops, and stormtroopers in fact, when trying to take points, and he just forgot about them. I mean, you don't want to do that. Train yourself in, and if it's hard, train yourself. It's really, really important you don't lose troops like that. That was absolutely horrific. And he did so well in the start, and then he just pissed it away. Again, retreating in time is a really valuable skill. I mean, he showed it a bit in the start, but then he apparently just lost it and lost stormtroopers in other sort of unfortunate circumstances. Grenadiers as well. And I can't help but feel he could have done better with an MG42 a bit further early in the game and actually supporting his troops instead of just placing it in buildings where it didn't do much. So be careful with that. Mines could have been interesting, and otherwise there's not really much to note here. Of course, this was interesting, of course, a bit fun mostly. Medic station a bit too exposed. You saw how quickly it actually got knocked out once he actually got to it. For example, having placed it up here, it's more or less same effect, but it would have been harder for the Wehrmacht commander to actually get to. And again, I really think he should have focused on one spot and actually held it. But he didn't. He jumped around back and forth, and I was really against his strengths. The Wehrmacht need a strong point, a Schwerpunkt to operate from. And also, get armored skirts for your M8s. Bloody hell, do it. He was incredibly lucky he didn't get it knocked out. Ridiculously lucky. And if you don't want to, get the T-17, but do not fail to upgrade the M8. Anyhow, cheers.